let me get your thoughts now on the actual situation of Cameroon, the socio-economic and even security situation of Cameroon, characterized by a lot of unpleasant things: poverty, hardship, misery, increasing cost of living, security challenges in the northwest, in the southwest, in the far north, in the east, and in major cities, in rural areas, just everywhere in Cameroon. What's your take on the actual situation of Cameroon today?
It's a very unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in, Mr. Jonathan. My family has been a victim of this crisis as well. My father-in-law was kidnapped by the Ambers. He was in their custody for more than a month. So I want you to picture that scenario, right? I was driving and all of a sudden a phone call came in. My wife was calling and I picked up the phone and she said, "Dad has been kidnapped." It was a very painful time for us. Just receiving that call that Dad has been kidnapped, the entire family was in shock. Now, why I talk about books a lot is because it was still another book that helped us, or helped me have perspective on how to navigate that situation. I had read a book written by an FBI hostage negotiator. So I handled this like every kidnap case. So the first thing was to put the family together. Everybody come together. The next step was we come up with a strategy, seek mentors. I had to call some of my friends back home. Some of them were commissioners and some of them were lawyers and in the diaspora as well, and seek their counsel. So they briefed me on exactly what to do in a situation like this. With the book I read, the knowledge I had derived from that book, I was able to put everything together and come up with the game plan. The strategy was one member from the family will be communicating to these guys alone. That is, no one else in the family talks to them except this individual that we have unanimously chosen. And I think that strategy was very effective because we could control the information. We could understand exactly what we were doing. They were demanding for 11 million francs. So the first thing was to make sure that we create that relationship with them, because you can give all the money in the world and at the end of the day still lose your relative. So the idea was be friends with them. The most important thing is to create that relationship, of which we did. One thing that happened during this process with this young man was we realized that in spite of how much we gave, nothing was changing. One day you hear this is the new general. The other general that took the money is not the real general. This is the new general now. I'm like, okay, who's the general now? You see, we keep having that. So we got at some point and we asked, like, what do you really want for your life, young man? And we realized that what this young men were asking for was not maybe what happened in 1961, but what they were demanding was just the basic necessities of life. They wanted access to education. They wanted opportunities. They wanted jobs. And because of this, I said, okay, if this is what you really want, then we can solve this problem, right? And that is what got me into research. And I'm like, okay, if it's job, if it's access to education, how can we figure this out? And that is what got me into research. Mind you, Mr. Jonathan, in spite of everything that transpired within a month, this young man, the relationship we built, they still wanted to take the life of my father-in-law. Lucky enough, he left the camp and made it alive back to the city. One thing that happened that was so fascinating to us was how the Amazonian leaders abroad presented this story on their platforms. The idea was that these people live in Yaoundé and they come to Bamenda to cause trouble. And this is someone that I know that lives in Bamenda, right? Woke up that morning in Bamenda, but the narrative painted on media was this man lives in Yaoundé and comes to Bamenda to cause trouble. what got me thinking was, who else, how many people have died and this false narrative has been painted about them? Mind you, I'm not blaming anybody. I understand the situation in the country. I'm a solution-oriented individual. So this didn't make me bitter, but it got me thinking and understanding that I have a certain degree of responsibility as a Cameroonian to contribute or play my own part to help bring peace and sustainable development to the nation. And that is when I started putting out content, creating awareness on the condition of our country. But before that, while I was doing my MBA, we were asked to write a paper on corporate social responsibility. It's rather unfortunate I didn't find sufficient data to write on this subject from Cameroon. So I looked into our neighboring country, Nigeria. What caught my attention was the Shell Niger Delta oil crisis. That is, the Shell Royal Company based in Britain has been exploiting oil in the Delta Niger area since 1966. And what I found fascinating was the inhabitants in that area have been struggling. The oil spills out, their crops are being destroyed. And so the people in that area sue the Shell company. And what really changed everything for me was realizing that these are all Nigerians. And this is happening to them. If it was me, based on my upbringing, I would say this is a Francophone against an Anglophone issue, or is the government against an Anglophone issue. That is how I would have perceived it. But this happening in Nigeria got me thinking. And so with that, I'm realizing through my research that most African countries have been struggling post-independence. And so my thing was, we should be a little bit patient on ourselves, but strategic at the same time and cooperative if we will make progress. So I started putting out data out there, letting our people understand the condition of our country, that 75% of Cameroonians are below the age of 40. 60% of Cameroonians are below the age of 25. 42% of Cameroonians are below the age of 14. The life expectancy of the average Cameroonian is 61. 23% of Cameroonians live below the poverty line. That is on less than $2.15 a day, according to the World Bank. So these are the statistics about our country that got me thinking that, okay, what do we do in a situation like this? And so the motivation for writing this book is saying, if we do not do something, we risk losing our country, maybe to some foreign nation that will come back again to exploit our resources. We risk losing a generation of people. Only approximately 3.11% of Cameroonians are above the age of 65. That means the rest of the population cannot hope on this 3.11% to take care of the entire nation. And if we, the young people, especially those below the age of 40, don't rise up and do something, this will be our story in the next 20 years.
We have to rise up and do something. I just want to step back a little bit to highlight something which you mentioned about the security issues and the kidnapping of your father and so on. As we are talking now, the Minister of Territorial Administration of Cameroon, Paul Atanganji, was responding to questions in Parliament some days back about the kidnapping of the divisional officer of Idaba to Roland Iwane and the council staff of that municipality, Tongo Ismail, who are in captivity in neighboring Nigeria. And he said that efforts have been made to set them free. I'm actually bringing up this because of the strategy that you talked about, the strategy that you deployed to ensure the freedom of your father when he was kidnapped. And I'm actually thinking that maybe the Cameroon government ought to borrow from this strategy, because when this happened on the 1st of October, the first thing that we saw wasn't what you mentioned, assembling the family to discuss and to put some strategies together, and then a person identified as the mediator between the family and the kidnappers. What we rather saw was threats, intimidations, injunctions, ultimatums to who I don't know, from the governor of the Southwest region, and some kind of draconian measures that were put in place. And I think that this strategy, which you just talked about, is something that should be borrowed by those who are in the think tank that has been created to see about the freedom of a divisional officer and the council staff who were adopted. Now,